Yeah.
You know why? Because we've all been panicked into thinking that we have kidnappers waiting on
There's
every
only one,
corner.
there's, you go into our subdivision, there's one street this way, one street this way, with a street.
You have sidewalks on your street?
Absolutely, on both sides. Absolutely, on both sides, and the parents still drive the kids down to Berkeley Road to get on the bus.
Right, because we're brainwashed into thinking that. Child molestation.
That's what I think about underground.
But that's okay.
I mean, I walk in there on the street. I would not
Oh.
be walking by myself in an enclosed area like that. If there were a lot of people, around, but the possibilities of that, or same thing with parking garages. I don't like parking garages when I'm by myself. Wimpy as I may be, but
Yeah.
you hear one or two stories like that, and you're more cautious.
What have you done here, Chase?
Well, a different approach on trying to change the character of the street.
Yeah.
Piece of pipe.
Yeah. So just here's Norris back up again, here's the, so trying to create a frontage road. Since it seems like the arterial nature of the road might not be able to change so easily, maybe we do.
It's a public highway.
Yeah.
You all familiar
Dots.
with the idea of a frontage road? This is, in modern terminology, it's called a multi-way boulevard. So you've got the slow street over here with parallel parking, and you come back out at the intersections, or sometimes a slip ramp out this way. And then it allows you to have stores, on-street parking, slow traffic, and then the major part of the traffic is still going back and forth on Kingston Pike. Yeah.
Do you guys realize that it's Thunder Road, and people are still reacting as if it is Thunder Road?
Yeah. Okay, so, question was raised during the break. Do we need a downtown? What do you all think? Been through the exercise. No, it's certainly not going to be easy. And just by the way, Chase, flip on, we've got one more possibility over here. And it's centered around the Campbell Station, Russell House. And we're going to talk about that after lunch. That's our 1:30 time slot. So it's a redo of a shopping center, but in a historic context. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's go back. So what do you all think? I'd like to get a recommendation out of this group as to what we might tell the public tonight at our public meeting. What do you all think about a downtown? The first question is it worth it? We got one no,
I think it is.
one yes.
I think it is. Oak Ridge, where is Oak Ridge?
Oak Ridge was built on the shopping center concept. They had a school, a grocery store, a barber shop, a beauty shop, you know, it was all built, and there was about 6 elementary schools, and there were 6 neighborhood centers. And then they built downtown in 59 or 58, something like that. And a lot of people think that's downtown Oak Ridge, but that's all privately owned piece of land.
Okay, yes.
I'm not really supposed to talk because I'm covering this and I don't live in Farragut. So from an outsider's point of view, I think if you don't have something, Farragut's going to become known as Turkey Creek. I mean, you know, I live in West Knoxville, I'm not in the Farragut boundary. And I think if you don't have a downtown or a vibrant town center.
If you don't
you're
tell
going-
people what you are, they'll tell you what you are.
They'll define it for you.
I noticed when I signed in, because I came kind of early, so there were only about 3 or 4 people ahead of me, but every one of them put their addresses on. Ahead of me, they put Knoxville, then they had to.
That's your mailing address.
Then
We're
the
on-
Farragut,
Oh,
Farragut,
Farragut's a
Yeah,
book.
very good, they all have Knoxville as their.
Well, it's not, let me clear that up a little bit. They allow us to use Farragut, but it is technically Knoxville. So that is, there is confusion. If someone, yeah, if you go and order something in a catalog
Right,
and, or
absolutely.
online, it'll pop up as Knoxville.
Absolutely.
But they have allowed us to use, and we
But it's
encourage
just
people
like-
to do it, but,
If, if you say I'm from Farragut, then you should say
Right.
I'm from Farragut.
right. But the US Postal Service
I know
hasn't
they will.
deemed that.
I know that.
Okay, back to the question on the table. Do we want downtown?
Okay, by shopping center, if you mean one that would be in competition with Turkey Creek, that's pointless because people won't come over here. No one's gonna put the money into it to invest in it. But if you had a specialized other kind of little district,
We're talking about a downtown, kind of a traditional downtown with stores close to the street, on-street parking, pedestrian-friendly, crossable streets.
Generally smaller boxes.
Generally smaller buildings, and probably mixed with a variety of other kinds of uses.
well, you almost have that going with Kroger Center. Starting. And if you buy the old Kroger area and build something there,
This is the old,
That's old.
my big words, two
Right there.
big words are community center, that's my big emphasis. And I feel that as an identification for Farragut, a lovely community center that's in the center of Farragut, in that area, is kind of one of those, if you build it, it will come sort of things. It will establish a center area.
okay.
I don't know how many people in this room would go to the Renaissance Center where the farmer's market is on Saturday mornings. It's a great place to meet people.
You go there now?
I enjoy going there Saturday morning just to have a little breakfast, do a little shopping at the farmer's market. But I see people I hadn't seen in weeks, maybe months, maybe since last summer. And I think that's what this community needs. It's a place where you can mingle, where you can, create some community spirit.
Yeah.
By having some functions on a square, on a market area within the boutique shops or whatever. But a place where you get together and gather and say, gee, I haven't seen you in weeks, or whatever. That's what builds the community, that's what builds the spirit. That's what we need.
Well, let me, we've struggled trying to figure this out. We struggled, now we struggle together, trying to say, okay, what's the right thing here? We got possibilities, as Nori said, we've still got some technical challenges, how to get across Kingston Pike, et cetera. And so we've got 3, 4 possibilities, all within the half-mile radius of this. But it's gonna take some effort, a lot of effort, and money. And frankly, it's not just the private sector that's gonna have to do it, the public sector's gonna have to get involved. As somebody said, one of the key challenges here is assembling the land. And no developer wants to be charged with having to negotiate that last little piece with somebody who wants to hold you up to the bank. So that is a role for the public to do, or we'd have to change our parking ordinances. We would have to do some other kinds of creative things here to make any of these schemes come about. Is it worth it? And can we build enough support for the idea? And certainly, the best idea probably is going to be one that starts small. It's probably not going to be terribly realistic to think we're going to go out in one fell swoop, make this whole thing magically appear. But the danger in starting small is sometimes you don't get any bigger. You got to have a critical mass to get things going sometimes. So it's gonna be a challenge, seesaw back and forth. What do you all think? Would you recommend to Farragut citizens who deputized you to come in here and do the first level of analysis? What are you gonna report back to them? Would you say this is worth doing?
I would say that it's worth doing if, before we look into a city center, we redevelop some of the areas that we already have in here that are eyesores. The old Ingles, to be perfectly honest with you, I mean, that is a prime piece of real estate. And if we threw our money at something that's already there to redevelop it instead of rebuild it, I think we're money ahead.
What do you mean by rebuild? What would you
Well,
rebuild?
you know, you could make that store look new. You can get a big box in there to take some of the load off of Turkey Creek. I mean, if you go over to Turkey Creek, there's two major, big stores that are vacant. They're not doing as well as people think. The big draws over there, there's things for kids to do as well as adults. There's a movie theater that's constantly packed. I mean, you wanna bring money into a town, put a movie theater in. But we have some prime pieces of real estate that are still vacant and have been for several years that could be the community center. You can make an Ingles or a Kroger into a community center with very little money. It's where do we want to put our money? And what do we want to buy first? Because I'm here because I don't want this, I want the city to spend the money as if it's mine. Okay? And if I want to ask myself, what's the most I'm going to get out of my buck? Okay, we can build this mega center and all that, but guess what? Everybody coming to it is going to drive by the vacant restaurants, the vacant Ingles, the vacant Kroger, and they're going to say, well, this is kind of out of place. I mean, don't you think? I mean, have you guys been driving down Campbell Station at Kingston Pike for the last 5 years and saw two pieces of vacant prime real estate sitting there, no sign up, when they're building a brand new Cheddar's restaurant right down the street on Kingston Pike, where we could have said, you know what, let's pay Cheddar's to come into Farragut. Let's get them here. Let's get somebody into these stores. We operate off of sales tax dollars, nothing else. So unless we have money coming in from sales tax, we can dream all we want to dream about building all these things. I'm all for it, believe me, because this is what increases property values. But we got to get people to spend money so we can get the tax dollars in order to build these type of things. And until we can get our businesses at least 90% occupied, we're driving down the wrong road here, because we have big, nice stores. Do they need a little, you know, paint and everything else? You bet. New facade, whatever. But, you know, we have a community center. It's vacant.
I have just been stimulated to lean in. I was probably not going to. But the fact is, Farragut lacks an identity. It already is a bunch of stores along a busy street that have no clear identity, that describes it in no meaningful way. We don't put our Farragut on our mailbox. Even the post office doesn't even recognize that there's the goal, I thought, and why I took the day away from my business to be here, is to try to do something transformational, to really create a new articulation of what the future of this area, this town, Farragut is. I've chosen to live here, but I don't necessarily choose to suggest that this is the highest quality place to live, because I drive everywhere else to do the things I want to do. I believe Farragut needs to establish a strong statement about how to stimulate a whole new identity. Then the stores that are sitting vacant along Kingston Pike will find people like me who invest in things to want to come in and be a part of that going forward. In the absence of an identity, in the expression of let's just save what we've got and fix up what we have, what we do is we do nothing about reaffirming a future. We just, what we do is validate the past. And I think what's important is if we're going to go through this exercise, if the city's going to spend money on bringing experts in from Colorado to help us to kind of formalize some sort of an idea, what we need is the city to come out of that with something that says in an energized way, here's what we think we can make Farragut in the future. And then let the developers, the individuals out there that have capital interests, find a way to be a part of that, because the city has said they'll stimulate that, as opposed to just spending some money on making a rec center out of an old grocery store. Because we can have a rec center, but if it's part of something bigger, that rec center will be more successful.
Okay, other thoughts?
I'm a Great Depression baby, and I think of money, of course, and all of that, but, you know, I'm not gonna be around too long, but, I think that what they're saying is good, and that we need to really work on what's already empty. We got either, let's use them or tear them down and start over, and, do that. And I rode my bike through, Ingles just last night. It's a big sign on the old Ingles door. It's available. But there's about several other stores right there too. I'd like to see progress. I'd like to see the downtown. I'd like to see what we started a few years ago and it fell by the wayside because of the recession. But that was one that the developer there was sort of a loner, and when it all got done, he had agreed, I understand, to do one of the buildings himself. And he tried to get other developers to partake of another building, and I don't think there are any takers, and it happened to be at a bad time too.
So, I'm hearing several different voices here. I'm hearing one that says, let's take care of what we got. Let's be wise stewards of what we've got. And I'm hearing another one that says, even if we take care of what we got, it is not going to change the image out there and be the magnet that we want. Kind of seconding both of those ideas. And here's my perspective. That Ingles has been vacant for a long time. Ingles didn't even think it was worth refurbishing. Okay, they owned the store.
Actually, they tried to, and then that was when the recession hit, their financing was denied, because they had plans for it, and then
Okay.
everything got pulled off.
They were gonna do something else with it. I mean, what
Yeah,
I'm saying is they moved.
Well, see, they built the new store next door, and then they were going to redo that one, and then all their financing got pulled, and at the time, Mr. Engel was actually a board director on the bank, he was financing, and that's what everybody was running into.
And that's a big problem for a lot of people today. So what we're seeing out there isn't necessarily a reflection.
Refurbish and rebuild.
And I've seen a few, frankly, the West End folks have been doing, I think, a pretty good job of kind of renewing the awnings, paint up, fix up, and keeping it bright and fresh. But I can also see that over time, it's not going up, it's maybe staying the same or gently declining. Okay? And so something else has got to happen. Doing nothing is not okay. And so that's the question before us, is what do we do? And what I'd like to suggest is that probably the answer here isn't just a downtown, or isn't just a recreation or a community center, or isn't just refurbishing some of our old shopping centers. It's probably all of the above. Okay? It has to be a multi-pronged approach. But I think the question is the town center on the list of things we should be doing?
I think it's part of the plan, and like you said, it's multi-pronged, and as time goes on, things will make themselves available to do this first or this first, and it's gonna be done in stages. It's not gonna happen all at once. So I think you need to have 5 or 6 different areas that we want to develop, and then slowly grow into it.
Do we have any other developers in the field, in the audience here, anybody else who's developed properties? Yeah. So tell me from a developer's perspective, what could the town do that would encourage you to make an investment in either refurbishing an old shopping center or investing in a downtown project, maybe such as either of the ones we've described, any of the ones we've described? What would it take for you to be, what could the city do to make this more interesting to you?
There's a lot of things in the municipal code that the town could use as incentives for a developer or an investor to develop things in a certain way. And so
For example.
Well, for example, you could have some relaxation of an open space requirement upon the final plat. You could have a relaxation of the buffer requirements under certain scenarios when you have certain zones adjacent to other zones. And there might be certain ways where, for instance, the one you were talking about on the Ford property where you had basically similar sized lots backing up to other lots. Well, right now that would require a buffer. But if you were able to have an incentive in there, well, it probably makes sense that you don't necessarily need a buffer for that. So I think there are some things that the town can do. The town doesn't have the ability to do traditional TIF financing like the city of Knoxville does in the reason being because the town doesn't levy a town property tax. The town could go as far as projects that the town really supports and the community supports. The town could go as far as helping subsidize some of the infrastructure costs. Some of the utility costs, some of the detention facility costs, maybe some of the walking trails, or maybe even the park area. Obviously, if a developer's paying a $500,000 for an acre of ground and they're buying 20 acres, and so they got a lot of figures involved, and the town wants an acre set aside, well, maybe the town could ante up and say, well, okay, I tell you what, the town will buy that acre of ground, and as long as the developer agrees to set it aside, deed it over to the town, and develop it as part of as a passive recreation area or a community center or active recreation area. I think there is definitely some things that the town can do, but it is somewhat limited, being that we don't have some of the traditional incentives that other communities have to really get behind a development, like the city of Oak Ridge, and maybe with some of the things that may or may not happen with the Oak Ridge Mall. But the town does have some tools at its disposal. I'm not necessarily sure I'd like to see the signage ordinances relaxed. I'm actually a supporter of pretty strict signage. So, however, there might be some scenarios in a downtown style environment that our signage ordinances, due to the fact they weren't designed for a downtown environment, that our signage ordinances may want to be relaxed for that, because at the end of the day, if I'm the developer and I got to attract tenants, well, those tenants want signage. And one of the things that they're going to throw back in my face, and I've had it happen to me, well, over on XYZ, whether I'm competing with Turkey Creek or I'm competing with Highway 321 in Lenore City or wherever, is, well, they allow all this types of signage. And I said, well, yes, that they do. And so sometimes I lose that battle with signage. So there might be some creative ways to do some things that are still aesthetically pleasing.
Like treating more like wayfinding than advertising.
Maybe they're like I said, I have I'm probably in the minority as far as developers are with signage, because again, I like very conservative signage. In my projects, you can see that matter of fact, my signage ordinance at Renaissance actually goes above and beyond what the town of Farragut's signage ordinance does. But there are some things that the town could do. But again, we're limited by budget. We're limited by capital funding. I mean, an idea that the town could do that other municipalities have stepped forward, mostly in the name of economic development, when they're trying to hire big employer-based businesses they're trying to recruit big employer-based businesses to come in, is they go actually acquire the property, and then they install the infrastructure, and then they sell the ground. But they only sell the ground to certain people who are going to do certain things. And that's a possibility. I'm not necessarily talking about Eddie's property or anybody else's property, but if the town is really set on it and the town wants to see things done a certain way with certain architectural elements, then the town would have to step up and say, okay, we'll develop it, but then we're going to recruit folks that are going to build a building a certain way, and they're going to build retail on the main and office on the second floor and residential on the third floor. And there are things that the town can do. Obviously, that's a major capital step for the town to be able to use taxpayer dollars and go into something like that. I'm not necessarily advocating that. I'm saying that is an option. Did you get enough from me, or should I keep going?
Say it one more time.
No one.
Developer incentive. What do you need to
Well,
get going?
I would pick up and move away from some of what was just suggested as another developer. Signage is important if nothing else brings people to the place. If things bring people to the place, the signage becomes less important. There is money out there right now that are chasing deals. I'm involved in a 300-acre deal that is in Florida. And Florida's not necessarily the epicenter of economic development these days. It's 300 acres, and it's all about a whole new revitalized expression of an area, a place. What is missing for Farragut, as a resident of Farragut, is there's no expression of place. And what's missing here is somebody defining with energy and whatever money can be made available, because the city has to make that happen, but really articulate it. And let me give the great example in my judgment, because I drive by it every day, of where this area is losing its way. A new Einstein bagel came in at the corner of an important road, Campbell Station and Parkside. You would think that as we try to talk about front doors to this community, we already identify Campbell Station to Kingston Pike as being the epicenter of this community. You would think coming off the freeway is the place we have to really tell the world what you're about to see, because you're about to turn left into Parkside and go and fight the traffic in what I think is the worst possible example of place. And there they build a building that has gray whatever as a definition of its face, of its facade.